Ooh, I want to talk about things. So some stuff came out about Exxon. Now, we already knew that they were denying climate change. They came across some company documents from a New York State lawsuit that had interviews with former executives. And it shows the very clear effort that the Exxon executives were doing to minimize climate change. And these documents that they found are likely going to be very useful in lawsuits that are being brought against Big Oil in multiple states. So this was cool. So this is a reversal of a Trump-era rule. And I have been making climate action videos long enough that I actually remember making a video talking about when Trump did this. And reversing this rule actually makes it easier for states to block projects. Tuck in for this one though, because low-key, this group is largely what my content tries to push back on. At least the work that this group does. So this is the Atlas Network, and it is a global network of right-wing think tanks. And their entire goal is to make y'all hate climate action people. Weird hobby, but hey. So this article primarily talks about European stuff, but if you keep going down. So the Atlas Network describes itself as a nonprofit that aims to secure the right to economic and personal freedom for all individuals through its global network of think tanks. But before it was a network, it was just one think tank, and it was in the UK, founded by a man named Anthony Fisher. He was born to a wealthy mining family. Shocker. If you want to, you can read more about his life, but so this guy was doing all this back in the 1960s. So what they would do is get professors to write short, digestible articles around things like currency conversion or sort of things that were fairly technical to the non-economists. But then they would have these wealthy donors to the IEA who would buy copies and then send them to all the schools and universities. And they would not disclose those corporate donors. The think tank method allowed corporations to say things that they couldn't say themselves without appearing to be merely speaking to their own profit motives. This way, the IEA, which is his first think tank, was able to rapidly spread the sort of free market ideology that helped elect Margaret Thatcher and spread her particular form of conservatism. Meanwhile, Fisher took his caged chicken fortune and used it to start a turtle farm. But he took his shenanigans in UK politics and took it to the US. In 1970, he did a speaking tour in the United States with the Institute of Humane Studies, an organization founded by David Koch. Early on in what would be a decades-long career in massively shaping American politics for industry's benefit. In those U.S. talks, Fisher encouraged American businessmen to fight back against the social movements of the 60s. In 1974, Fisher traveled to Canada, co-founding his first think tank outside of Britain, the Fraser Institute. Shortly after that, he went to Australia. He founded a few more in the UK, and then by the late 70s, he was back in the US. He co-founded the Manhattan Institute and the Pacific Research Institute with help from the Koch brothers. So we're going to fast forward a bit to more recently. These think tanks that he aggressively built in the US, yeah, they're busy at work. In 2016 and 2017, in the wake of the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, they were busy painting indigenous activists as violent. They had a meeting with the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. We've talked about them before. They are an Atlas member that connects conservative politicians and corporations. They described protesters at Standing Rock as dangerous and destructive, claiming that a large number of activists at Standing Rock had criminal records, and claimed that these protests were becoming more violent. By the end of 2017, they had drafted legislation that criminalized protesting near critical infrastructure. ALEC pushed it in other states, and Canada also took a similar approach, all because of this think tank network. This is why it's so important to amplify climate actions. Share the posts, show your support, donate if you can, because the Atlas Network is well funded, and they are actively trying to influence every single one of you in many ways.